right, let's take a look at this virtual tabletop, not called a virtual tabletop from D&D Beyond. Hey folks, I had a good day at work. I thought I would try to play around a bit and I haven't done some streaming direct in a while. I've been doing some Lore of Neverwinter and Success in RPGs, but haven't really streamed much. So let's change that. Today, out of nowhere, came a really big announcement that apparently D&D Beyond has another VTT they're launching, which is really neat. And if you have been following sort of my blog at alphastream.org, I've covered extensively the D&D Creator Summit that took place back in, was that March? Something like that, early in the year. And then there was supposed to be a second summit, but if it did happen, it wasn't like the first. At Gen Con, there maybe was another one. But the summit was sort of one of the first times that we really got to look at the virtual tabletop that Wizards of the Coast is going to be creating, which will take a couple years to develop. That virtual tabletop is going to be 3D, and it's going to use the Unreal Engine, and it's going to just have a ton of features. It should be really, really interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing it, and if you have been to my blog, you saw that I talked about what it looks like. And so I'll just use that as a reference point. An Ankheg 3D miniature that is looks like it's coming out of the ground, which is kind of neat. You can have your guy walk through a door and be in a tavern. And all of it was really impressive graphics, as you can see in this picture here. This is what they called their pre-alpha that they released. And there was sort of an island. And you could put static maps down as well, but the whole point of this was to have this sort of amazing 3D environment. And there's a lot that has to do with creating an environment like this. It's a ton of work. It's like creating a video game for them to create all these parts and make sure that you could add them. They have said that in the future, you want to be able to do things like take a wall out and change it up. All of that's going to require a lot of work. Easier is, putting tokens of a fire instead of having an actual fire effect or something like that. So we'll see. You can read all about what I saw during this demo. And there have been other folks that have been doing alpha testing since this summit, some of them rather recently, and have talked about what they've found. And one of the things that I find really fascinating about the virtual tabletop is the whole economics of it and how it impacts our hobby. So in the article, I added this picture, which I think is kind of fun, which is something that came out in the 3rd edition days of if you're going to sit in your basement pretending to be an elf, you should at least have some friends over to help. And, but here we are kind of going back to, no, get on the computer instead of being in person. That's all fine. I mean, it's all great. But, this is the idea, right? This kind of a virtual tabletop that you could see. So today came this big announcement that there is a different offering in the works. And I also shared, I think on an episode of Mastering Dungeons, the podcast that we do, that there is a change to how Wizards of the Coast organizes the D&D groups. And there are different pillars. So D&D Beyond is a pillar. And then the virtual tabletop, and they have a different name for it, but it's essentially the virtual tabletop group. That's another pillar. So today came the announcement of what's called D&D Beyond Maps. And Maps is a clever name. I don't fault them at all because this is like a VTT, but you want to not call it a VTT. So let's call it Maps. And so Maps is the name that D&D Beyond is using, which creates a nice differentiator from the actual virtual tabletop that's going to be the 3D version that's going to come eventually. But Maps is basically a virtual tabletop in the same way that a tool like Owlbear Rodeo is a virtual tabletop, but is also very light, like what you're going to see in Maps. So you can take a look at the post that's on D&D Beyond today, how to start playing. It gives you a nice walkthrough of how to get started. I looked at it very briefly. I skimmed this and I was able to get going. One important thing is that to get going, you will have to have a D&D Beyond account and be at the master level as a subscriber in order to be the dungeon master that's using it. As a player, you could then just be invited. So I want to go through and see kind of what I've found and see if it works the second time that I do it, because I tried it very quickly today. So yeah, you need a master tier subscription, and then you're going to launch the map through the general map webpage. Also worth noting is that there is a roadmap talking about the things that they are going to fix over time, because it is not 100% at all by any means. But it's really actually very far along. They call this an alpha, and as folks in the Mastering Dungeons and Alphastream Discord have been saying, it is really good. Like, this is a 1.0, not it doesn't feel like it's a 0.1 or something like that. It certainly doesn't feel like an alpha, at least a beta. But it is not that far from what something like Alba or Rodeo provides, and with some other advantages which I want to talk about as I look at this. So what are they going to do? They're going to add a pointer tool and a draw tool. They're going to enhance token options. Certainly, this is something that I've already found. I'll talk through this about how I wish tokens worked a little better. Session controls and a connected players menu. That makes a lot of sense. Right now, you can't really do a great job of seeing who's tied in, and it doesn't feel like a session. It's just sort of loosely things are tied together. But hey, at least they're tied together in some ways. Better zoom control, a polygon for Fog of War would be great. More details in the game log, so you can see exactly how a roll worked. High contrast mode, additional user interface theming, a light mode, additional token options, measurement tooling, a ping tool, ruler, and overall improvements. But it's pretty neat. We have a number of campaigns that are offered that you can start with, and as you'll see, a fair amount of flexibility in how to just make your own use out of this tool. So you can run Lost Mine of Phandelver. That's sort of the easiest if you don't want to just jump in. That's kind of the easiest if you know Lost Mine, the original starter set adventure, or have what just went live today is the Phandelver and Below adventure is now available. Both digital and out in the wild. If you have the D&D Beyond version, well, you can use that by selecting Lost Mine. Frozen Sick, the introductory adventure, which is a lot of fun. And Prisoner 13, a heist adventure. Those are all sort of set up as pre-mades that you can go with. And so what's going to happen is on this general map screen, which I think I already have open here, I don't need to, you can select which of your many campaigns you want to add. And actually, maybe I want to reopen that window because I don't know why my, what's it called? My, one of my options is not here, but maybe it's gone from all of them. That's interesting. So let's try this. Let me reload this. I've found that sometimes reloading is necessary to see the things that you want to see. There it goes. So it's back. So if in doubt, hit reload. So now I have more options. But you can see here, what this is a list of my campaigns. So when you say select game, you can go here and say select game and choose any of your campaigns that you've created. So in the D&D Beyond interface, where if, do I have this here? Maybe I don't. D&D Beyond. If you go to your collections and my campaigns, this is where you will be able to see, that's what you're going to see in this down arrow. The campaigns that you've created, they'll show up here. So I have various campaigns here, and I can choose one of my Lost Mine of Phandelver ones, and I can do that. Or I can go down here and create one of these pre-made. So like let's start this. Let's start new. We'll select Frozen Sick. And I've had this happen kind of each time I started it, where it just says no map selected. And I don't know if it's taking a while to load up or what it might be, but it looks like you can't do anything. And all you see here is like an invite link, map link that you can copy, and then the game log, but there's nothing there now. And so that can be kind of confusing. But if you reload it, I think, usually I see an interface. There it is. The interface pops up. So I've always had to reload it. I don't know if it's a Firefox thing or something else, but I have had to hit reload on the web page every time. And now we get to where we can see any maps you've uploaded before, basic maps you can use, and then maps from adventures. And it's a little strange because you started with the campaign, but that didn't actually affect this screen at all. I don't know what that is. It will, however, remember. Actually, I guess I did I said I was going to do Frozen Sick, and it didn't take me to Frozen Sick, which actually I don't see under this adventures list. So that's interesting. But maybe through basic maps I can choose it. So it's a little weird with its disconnect. You think and even if I go to my campaign, I'll end up with this sort of a window when I should go to what really is my campaign. So let's look at basic maps. Now, these are just really very basic. So stone tiling, but you can see they're very pretty. They're, like 4th edition. This was from a set of tiles that were given out to dungeon masters as a reward. So I can say plus, and boom, there it is. If I close this, I can now see, hey, look, there's, a perfectly serviceable boat. Now you may want more water than is here. Now I'm just using my zoom mouse to kind of go in and out. You might want more than this. I would, more water, space for monsters or whatever, but it's, serviceable. And let's take a look at the interface. So here, this is the little kind of map layer. You can see I have boat, and then I could open the browser again to add more. So I could say, oh, okay, we're gonna, end up in this grass field. So I click plus on that, and now grass field is there. And just clicking lets me toggle back and forth. So toggle, we're on a boat. So boat, now I need to do something. So I could, before any players arrive, I could add the fog of war, and I can say cover all, for example, and everything's covered, or reveal all. In this case, there's no real reason to have a fog of war, so I'm not going to bother with fog of war. My hand tools by default doesn't do much in this, but it could move tokens or things like that. So let's go to tokens. Monsters. This does leave some things to be desired, but there's also a lot here. You have a ton of monsters to choose from. Some have icons, some do not. So the Abjurer just is what it is. But, an aboleth works. So let's, do a search for something like shark, and it'll search through the list here. And I could go with a corrupted giant shark, which is huge. And it knows the size of the map already, so this should, you can see that's basically huge. So I could plunk it down right there off the side. None of the others really have a great image. So, if I go with a hunter shark, which is large, it's just going to show up like that. And I can plunk it down somewhere off of there. There's the hunter shark. Right now, I don't see a way that I could add my own tokens here, but maybe that'll come in the future. Companions and players are going to be linked based on, at least for players, it's based on who's been invited. And so I don't currently have any invited players, so none of the player tokens will show up here. When you invite someone and they are associated with the campaign, then they will show up here. And I'll give you an example in a bit when I change to another campaign. But that will allow us to do it. So this is an example of, plunking down tokens, all very serviceable, all very cool. And if I go and switch to my grass field, everything I had on the other map is gone, and I can't copy or paste back and forth. So the sharks stay on that map. If I wanted to bring the characters over, currently, as I understand it, I'd have to add them again. So if I had a placeholder NPC, let's say I search for wizard, and I add, this guy and that guy, and maybe I search for warrior, and I might add this Goliath, right? So one thing that's nice, it plunks down miniatures so that they do not overlap automatically, so they don't get stacked and hidden. You can see them there, which is nice. And I could add a grung just for fun. So if this is the party, there they are, and then I can drag them into place. There is no snap to grid. I can put them anywhere. And there are no controls. So we were talking on the Patreon Discord today that, if you're running for kids, kids love to do things like just move stuff around, right? And there's nothing to prevent you from doing that. Now, I will say, in the Wizards of the Coast virtual tabletop, when we demoed it, that was true as well. People could do all sorts of shenanigans, and there was nothing stopping it. So this really isn't that different, at least in this version. And tools like Roll20 and Owlbear Rodeo, this is the case as well. You can move a lot of the tokens around when it's not your turn. And so that is a problem on many platforms. Depending on the options, you can close them down. Not in this tool. This tool is real simple, and there is no way to clamp that down. And so you turn your head as DM, and you might find that people decided that they're over here in the trees, and that's just the way it goes. So is what it is and it may not work for all groups because of those kinds of features. So, we're here, and we could add any number of monsters based on this. So again, I could search for something else like Hobgoblin, and here's a Hobgoblin, and I can add another, and I could add a Devastator and an Iron Shadow. Boy, it feels like 4th edition. I can move these guys over here, and by the way, I like that. It's not a criticism. And I can, it works pretty well to grab things, in amongst it. As you can see, it's pretty good. Oh, and of course I can zoom in, right? So I can make that bigger. I can embiggen it so I can see what's going on a little better. And really work to the detail. And even though I'm not in like hand tool, it kind of defaults to the hand situation. So, then I could roll initiative. We can do all these things. Speaking of that kind of thing, so the way that will work is I can invite somebody. So if this were an actual campaign, I'm happy with how I've set it up. I could, which depending on you may want a lot of setup. Like you want to set up every one of these maps, right? Right now I've got this boat and I've got the grassy field. I could decide that this is my setup and I'm ready to go. Or I could do it all on the fly like I'm doing now, right? Depending on how much you want to do. It all works. But what you would do is invite. And what I don't know actually is whether players can see all of these. It's a good question as to whether players get to see all this. But you can do an invite link, and it will copy it to the clipboard. And then what you do is share that with folks. Folks will get to copy that and join the campaign. So if I open a blank web browser and I do this, it says, hey, it's a game of Frozen Sick. Apparently it is. And you can associate characters. So like, in fact, I'll do this right now. I'll join with my Plasmoid cleric called Gloop. Although he doesn't have a token. Maybe I'll join with someone else. Elb Rockhammer. I think he's one of the pre-gens that I made for folks to use. So I'll join with Elb. And now I should be in the campaign as Elb. And let's see, go back. Let's go back to the map here. So now I think that I think I have to reload it, but let's check. Because there are no players here. Let me reload the campaign. Hope it all doesn't crash. Let's see. It's a dark screen. So there's some improvements to be had. Let's try it again. Hey, that looks better. So the map came back. That part's great. And let's see, when I look at players, hey, there's Elb. And now you can add Elb. So that's how it works. There's Elb. So again, to review, you'd go down to the little information icon. And let me make sure that's visible. Yeah, that's visible on the screen. So you click on the information icon, invite link, and send it to folks. You could also copy the map, and they would be able to see just the map. So if you wanted to like paste it into Discord that you're just using this map, you could do that. I don't know why you would necessarily do that, but you could. So with this invite link, any number of players can join. When they join and you reload the thing, refresh your web browser, you will see then that character shows up. You can technically add multiple elves, though you don't need to do that. Delete key does delete them. And then companions, I'm not entirely sure how companion works. If somebody knows, let me know. Add a comment. But that's how it would work. So you have the characters are here token-wise through that invite. The other thing that happens now is if I go to my web browser and let's pretend that I'm actually playing Elb, and I go to view Elb. So if I were the player, I've joined with that link. I've got Elb here. Now what I do as Elb is I can, let's say make a perception check. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to click on perception. It rolls a die on my screen, this is what I as a player would see, right? I see this die roll and I see this, the 16 result. 13 plus 3 equals 16, right? Cool. All right, now we go back to the map. And if we click on this game log, we see perception check 16. It just gives us the total, doesn't give us the full information. If you remember, the change log said, or the roadmap said, they're going to be breaking this out, so you can see a better information here of how Elb got a 16, or if he rolled with advantage, whatever. You're going to see how that came across in the game log. Similarly, I could say, hey, Elb, what do you want to do? And Elb could say, well, I'm going to charge this first hobgoblin with the big horns, and I am going to attack with, I guess I'm right up next to him. So with my warhammer. And I roll an 18 on the die, plus 4 is 22, and the DM tells me I hit, and then I roll my damage, and that's 9 points of damage. And back here on the map side, we see the 2 hit and damage. It's all really nice, right? It's really actually quite clear. I was expecting this to be a lot worse in terms of how easy it was to follow what's going on, but we can see that Elb rolled a hit, got 9 damage, work it. Now, what about the monster side? So for the monster side, it adds another little complication. So here we have to go to the encounter builder, and let me go back to my encounters. And actually, even I'll go back to the very beginning. So if you go to Tools, Encounters, which is in beta, here I could build an encounter. So let's build an encounter. I'm going to say, and this is the very important part, manage characters. You go to manage characters, and here you can choose your campaign. And do note that if you do these sort of like ready-made campaigns, they'll end up with the same name. So I'm pretty sure this is, Elb is there. So I could also add a character, let's see, what are the level 3? And I could add a character level 3. So you can add characters and also just like do placeholders if you're doing your encounter building. So we know Elb's in the party, but we're going to say that there are 4 characters. So, all right, I think that is good. I don't have to do anything else. So it expects 4 characters, party level 3, and I can say hobgoblin, and then I can add a hobgoblin, and let's do, what is it? I guess we could even do we had the Devastator. So let me close this. We can add a Devastator. That's too much. That's still too much, but okay, whatever. We've got 2 hobgoblins and a hobgoblin Devastator. We've clearly got too many monsters on the map, but let's say this is it, right? So now I've got them in my encounters. And the important part, because I did this manage characters, I have linked it to my campaign. Right? This is the campaign link. This is what's going to let this all work. Now, when I hit save, I didn't title my encounter, but now I can use these off. I can run my encounter, right? And I can do things like initiative. So I could, let's see, what is it? Auto roll initiative. Let's see, does that come across here? No, it didn't come across here, but I can choose this hobgoblin, and you see the hobgoblin has statistics here that are highlighted, and I can make checks, right? So I could make a strength check. I roll the die, 13 plus 1, 14, and if you look over here, a strength check by the hobgoblin, right? And so if I go back here, and I look at the longsword here, I can do a roll to attack. That was a 4, so that missed. And then I could say, hey, the second one comes up, rolls to attack. That's also a 4. And then that Devastator saved me with an example of actually doing something decent. Actually, what happens if I cast a fireball? Will it let me roll the dice from here? Doesn't look like it. So there may be some things that are a little hard to do directly here, because I don't actually see a normal die roller, though I guess I could probably do that here. It's interesting. But let's say I use my devastating bolt. So I roll +5 to hit. Hey, there's a 23. And this is why this guy's way too powerful for the party. But I roll now my damage, 4d8. And I get 24 points of damage here. So you see that here, right? The bad attack rolls from the two, these two hobgoblins, they come over here and they miss terribly. And then this guy comes over here and fires at the apprentice wizard and devastate with this bolt. So what you'd want to do is have several windows open, right? You've got one window that's got your encounter there so that you can roll on that and see that encounter separately. And then you've got another window that is this window here that we're looking at right now, where you can see the results and move the token. So you would move your token, then you'd come over here and, my last hobgoblin rolls to it, or I guess that's the devastator again, but you roll to attack and now you get a 12 and that's how it is. So that's the concept. It's pretty cool. I think you can find a way to roll and to share the initiative. But I haven't seen it come across. Oh, I know. I have to hit start. That's what it is, I think. Let's see if it comes across here. No. Let's see. I thought I would see the initiative. No, I didn't see it come across. But yeah, so, and this is through the encounter, running the encounter, which I think not everybody has access to. But even if you don't have that, you can just off of the encounter level, you can just off of here, you can roll. So you don't have to go into the encounter itself. You can just roll things directly. So everybody should have access to this part of it, no matter what, is my understanding. And you can just click from this area. So to summarize, you go into, you go to the maps page, you either choose something or that they provide, or you can add in one of your campaigns. When you are in the map, you can add any number of monsters, and you can do that even based on the encounter builder. The tokens don't carry over, but you can search them there. You can see there's a lot of opportunity here for integration over time that could be really quite cool. And you can make all kinds of checks once you've made your encounter, which you could have given it a title. You can now click on any of these and you see their stats and you can roll on them. Similarly, players who have been invited to the campaign, because they were invited to that campaign, they can make rolls here and they can, fire off a guiding bolt and see that they get a 24. Nice roll. And then they can roll the damage of guiding bolt and tell everybody they have advantage on it and so on. And similarly on the encounter builder, when you build that encounter, you want to make sure that you do the, if I go into here, how do I edit it? Edit. When you go to this encounter, the really important part here is manage characters. That's where you assign it to the campaign. And you could also here name it. Something like that. That's what allows you to do all this. So pretty cool, right? Play around with it, see what you think. One other thing I'll show is that you can easily make your own, add your own maps, which is pretty cool. So as a test, I uploaded this guy just for fun. And let's switch to it. So we're going to go to my little test here. And this is from an old Layer Salt adventure, really cool map, one of my favorite maps out there. And, really neat, this kind of boats that have been lashed together to make sort of an island or base. And I'll show you an example of the fog of war. So we could cover everything in a fog of war. And then I can choose the erase tool and I could say, have the characters start here. And so I could say, well, they can see, this maybe, or maybe they can see, like, if they're standing on here, maybe they can see part of this, because I guess that's just a railing on the outside. And I could, erase this, the fog of war, blah, 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 blah. And maybe they can also see over here. And so I could just clear all these areas that they can see. Now you can see this is a little tedious. It takes a long time to clear this out. And that's where they're talking about adding some sort of polygon tool so that you could just go like, I make a square and I fill that square with emptiness, right? I clear that square instead of having to do this manually. So right now it's a little bit tedious that you have to do it manually, though, what you could do is if this were your prep, you prep this before time, and then somebody comes in, or you add the players, and once the players are here playing, then you can, unveil the rest as they go. So the players come in and they, open this door, and that's when you decide to like show them, hey, here's what you see now. And then you'd clear this area out for the fog of war, and, they'd get to see this. Yeah. So that's the idea. You get it. It doesn't have dynamic lighting like Roll20 does, or any of the many cool features that Roll20 does. But I mean, kind of surprising. Like this is, not bad for a little offering that we didn't expect at all. So yeah, I'm curious to see what you think. If you're on my Patreon, I'm looking forward to what folks in Discord say. It's already been pretty interesting to chat through all of this. And yeah, neat. I really like that you can just add any map. Hopefully in the future we can add any token, because it'd be really neat to be able to add our own tokens to that. I think we'll want to add feature tokens and things like that, but it's cool. Not bad. Let me know what you think. Hope you enjoyed this stream, and I'll talk to you all later.